All right, folks, welcome back to another Castle Nathria card review. In fact, this is the final Castle Nathria card review. We got, I think it was 35 or 40, maybe 40 new cards in this review to talk through. So I'm going to go at a bit brisker pace than normal, but they're still going to take a while because there's so many freaking cards. But we've seen them all, so let's get into it, kicking it off with Suffocating Shadows. It's a 3-mana spell that reads, when you play or discard this, destroy a random enemy minion, and it's a shadow spell in this case. So at a base level, it's a deadly shot. Probably not the most exciting card in modern Hearthstone. It's pretty hard to hit the right things these days with deadly shots. There's often pretty wide boards out there, especially perhaps in an infused meta. It would be really tough to hit key targets with the Suffocating Shadows. But if you discard it, you don't have to spend mana on it. It's totally free in that case. And that's not bad at all. And we got a card like Tome Tampering. If you remember this got revealed earlier. This shuffles 1-cost copies of cards in your hand in your deck and then discards your hand. So you discard the Suffocating Shadows and then boom, that's much more efficient. Now, we don't have a ton of discard support in standard format right now. I'm actually going to pull this up for you guys just to show you. These are the discard synergy cards currently in standard. If you want to review these, it's not enough for a deck. I don't even know if it's really enough for a package quite yet. It feels like it's not enough payoff there, really. It's kind of just the Suffocating Shadows and Jack-Lick that are big payoffs. So I think we have a ways to go here. I do not think you're going to see Suffocating Shadows anytime soon, but it feels like they're at least laying the groundwork for some support later. And if this deck gets supported, then Suffocating Shadows certainly feels like it's a fine payoff for that. Some nice removal for this discard sort of package. So I'm obviously going to try to make this work day one. But for now, Suffocating Shadows, just a pretty weak card and some potential for later. This is Murlockula, a new 4-mana 3/4 Murloc with Lifesteal and Infuse 4. This costs 0. So as we know, 0-mana cards can always be a little bit problematic. And although this has a somewhat costly Infuse condition, I mean, Murloc decks that might want to swarm the board early probably don't have a super hard time activating said Infuse. Particularly, I think, in Warlock, where there's a lot of those 1/1 Murlocs you can summon early, and you kind of want to keep a fuller hand of stuff because it needs to be in hand to be infused. And then eventually get hand buffed. That seems like it's something that scales really nicely with Lifesteal. So I wouldn't be surprised if some Murloc decks can safely include Murlockula here as a 0-mana dump with some keyword upside. The Countess is a Paladin legendary 7-mana 7/7 battle cry. If your deck has no neutral cards, add 3 legendary invitations to your hand, and a legendary invitation is a 3-mana spell that discovers a legendary minion from another class. It costs 0. So this is a little bit like Queen Ashara vibes, getting a card that then gives you another cheap card. For Ashara, it's a Colossal. For here, it's going to be a legendary minion from another class. It could actually often be Colossals in this case. So Countess is more value total than something like Ashara, but basically more expensive to get it rolling. It costs 10 mana to get that first free minion instead of 9, and the condition, of course, here is a little bit different. So I think if there are some value driven Paladin decks, things that need to go longer, grind people out, the Countess is a fit in those decks. But a lot of decks will focus instead on having enough removal and control and survivability as opposed to raw value. Especially things like Wild Pyromancer can be pretty important in slower grindier Paladin decks to pair with things like Equality. That's a neutral card, could create some restrictions for Countess here. So interesting option for a slim number of decks, but I think a slim number at most. Imbued Axe is a new warrior weapon, 3-mana 2/3. After your hero attacks, give your damage minions +1/+1, and then infuse 3 +2/+2 instead. Now remember, for that infuse, it needs to be in the hand to infuse. It's not like you can equip it and it will still infuse, at least not based on anything we've heard so far. That said, this is not a terrible weapon at a base level. That 2/3 stat line is not amazing for 3. You'd often prefer a higher attack value, but I don't think it's going to take much for this to be worth it from a buff standpoint. And you get 3 swings potentially to make it worth it. So simply just having like a rush minion, value trading it in, and then buffing it with the Imbued Axe, especially if you get that +2/+2, that's going to add a lot of value on top of this pretty quickly. I actually think this is a nice weapon, and we've seen a lot of this damaged package support already in Nathria. We've also still got like Frenzy stuff hanging around, so I wouldn't be shocked at all if Imbued Axe does find a home. This is a 4-star card. Suspicious Pirate is a 3-mana 3/4 pirate for warrior. Battlecry, discover a weapon. If your opponent guesses your choice, they get a copy. And I think that's going to be advantageous for the player choosing the weapon initially more often than not. Because if you're playing an aggressive pirate deck, you like your pirates, you like your aggression, you're going to use more of that weapon than your opponent will. Often that weapon's not going to be especially useful for them, maybe even hard for them to weave into a turn, and you can pick one that's like maybe a nice shape for your minions in particular. So I think this could actually fit into Pirate Warrior decks. It doesn't have quite as much of the pirate consistency, finding more pirates and completing quest line and so on as other pirates, but still a nice little minion. It's got some possibilities. The Light It Burns is a new 1-mana priest spell. It's a holy, and it reads, deal damage to a minion equal to its attack. So here we have some potential removal is needed, and can be really efficient removal. If you have things with symmetrical stat lines, 5/5s and 8/8s, which often pop up in the history of Hearthstone, this is a really clean way, for instance, to kill something like an 8/8. Super cheap. It's probably less good on average than a lot of other things. There are, a lot of like 3/6 style minions floating around, or even 4/5s floating around, and then this is not quite as useful. You need some sort of follow-up to finish off that minion. But, as something like a replacement for like a Holy Smite, for instance, you'd probably always run this over a card like Holy Smite, because often it's going to be just as good against most minions, and then sometimes it'll be insane against bigger minions. So the scalability on it seems really nice to me. So I actually think this is a good little flexible removal tool that a lot of priest decks could run really well. Cheap spells also just work nicely with priest comboing into turns and other things, weaving into some removal turns. So I think this looks like a strong card. Next up here, we have the Anima Extractor for Warrior, a 2-mana 1/4. It's kind of got Armor Smith vibes, because it reads, whenever a friendly minion takes damage, give a random minion in your hand +1/+1. So we have some Enrage style support, but instead of gaining armor, you're going to gain some crazy potential hand buffs. This actually seems kind of nuts to me, because you get a few minions on board and you whirlwind, you're talking about some crazy scaling buffs really quickly. And then, this might go off multiple times in a given turn. You could easily, I think, net like 3/3, 6/6, maybe even more off of a single Anima Extractor. You stack a couple of these up. That's kind of nuts. You put like charge minions in the mix, start buffing that sort of stuff, even just rush minions going into this Enrage package. This seems like a really nice engine for Warrior. I think this could be a card that empowers a deck completely because of just how many buffs are possible, setting up some like crazy mid-game turns with just bonkers hand buffs. Also, you've got things like Remornia that gets buffed potentially and goes crazy too. That weapon could be enormous with cards like Anima Extractor. So I actually think this is a really good, potentially deck-defining sort of card. Anonymous Informant, a 2-mana 2/3 neutral, reads, the battle cry, the next secret you play costs 0. And yeah, I think cards like this are always really important for secret decks. Cheating secrets into play, a la the old Kirin Tormage, is when secret decks feel best. So this seems like a really efficient way to do that. Just get a little River Croc on the board, get some tempo while also developing your secret game plan and speeding it up, basically. So I don't see secret decks succeeding a ton. I think Rogue has the highest chance right now. This kind of fits into Rogue, but you might want other ways to cheat cards into play. So I think this is fringe at best, but still, playable card for sure. Next up, we have more totem support. Thank God for Shaman. This is the Carving Chisel, a 2-mana 1/3 weapon that reads, after your hero attacks, summon a random basic totem. So this is 3 totems in one here with the Carving Chisel kind of spread out across turns. And of course, we've seen some other things to synergize and empower our totems, things like the Stone Right, for instance. So these could be like 2/2 totems you're summoning in some cases, if this comes down late in the game. Gonna be honest though, it still feels so slow to me. It just takes forever to get these extra bodies in play. They just still often die for free. There's just not a lot of problems for your opponent to deal with. The weapon itself at 1 attack, I mean, that's not like helping you keep up on board early. If this was a 2/3 or something, okay, sure, that makes more sense to me, but as a 1/3, this just still looks really weak. All right, next up here we have the Chatty Bartender, a 4-mana 4/4 for Mage. At the end of your turn, if you control a secret, deal 2 damage to all enemies. So this is a little bit of a secret follow-up. Say you develop a secret naturally on 3. It's perhaps something that can't be removed if you don't have a minion, say like an Oasis ally. Then you play the Chatty Bartender on 4 to help you swing the board back. Maybe tidy up your opponent's minions and develop a 4/4. And if they can't remove it, of course, you can start to snowball off the back of that effect going off. And it does a little bit of chip face damage as well. I do think I like this a little bit bit better as a secret follow-up. It's got some immediate reactivity. It can respond to boards a little bit, has some AoE utility. Still think it's going to feel a little awkward sometimes if you don't happen to have the perfect curve for it, if you need to play a secret with it. That can be a little expensive to do in Mage. There's ways to cheat out secrets, as we saw, but even that's like 2 mana and 4 mana. That's a 6 mana turn, right? Is the 2 damage AoE going to keep up in that case later into the game? So a bit better than some of the cards we've seen so far, but I think still just a hair awkward, and it's going to be really tough to get this off the ground as I see it currently. Next up, we have Collateral Damage for Hunter, an 8 mana spell. Deals 6 damage to 3 random enemy minions. Excess damage hits the enemy hero. This is a crazy spell. I think ideally here, right, you want some 1 health minions on board. Your opponent summons a bunch of 1/1s, and you hit each of them for 6. It's basically like 3 piercing shots in 1, and then that deals 15 damage to the enemy hero. That is indeed pretty efficient, crazy damage output at 8 mana for a single card. That is a super Pyroblast. Of course, the challenge here is going to be finding the right board states to convert that damage. Now, it doesn't always have to be damage, right? Sometimes this can just be a good board clear, and any damage you get is kind of a bonus. So, you know, if your opponent has 3 5/5s, you're probably still pretty happy to clear 3 5/5s, and the 3 face damage you get is just a little bit extra. But there will be some middle of the road boards too with a bunch of 3/3s. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna get 9 damage and clear some of these off. So if it's not quite lethal, it's still gonna be a little bit responsive. I think that's actually kind of cool. It feels like a flame strike with some upside in a lot of cases in a lot of game states. You know, the wider the board, the worse this gets, but there are some sweet spots there that could be really nice. The question for this one, of course, is context. What Hunter decks are able to run this? Can they really commit to an 8 mana spell that's a little bit more like defensive in nature? I don't know if even like big beast hunters want to do that. They're often doing things that are more proactive, looking for plays that get them out ahead and don't really respond as much. So I think the output on this card's really high. It's just the deck fit that leaves me a little concerned. Next up here for Warrior, we have Conqueror's Banner, a 2 mana spell. It reveals a card from each player's deck 3 times. Draw any of yours that cost more. This is kind of like a joust style effect, and rewards running expensive minions. If you have, or really just cards, if you have expensive cards in your deck, you're going to be able to draw quite a bit here for 2 mana. 2 mana draw 3 would be rather efficient, and for some decks that's going to be nice. And if you think about Warrior 2, there are certain cards like Shield Shatter that's like 10 mana. You're not really playing 10 mana for it, but it counts as a 10 mana card for Conqueror's Banner. So anything that like reaps discount rewards is going to be more likely to be drawn. And I don't know that you need 3 cards to make this feel good. 2 cards is probably plenty in many cases. So for a lot of matchups, this could be a way to weave in some card draw into early turns without sacrificing too much. I think that's actually a pretty high utility card and something Warrior might indeed like quite a bit. Next up here, we have the Crazed Wretch, a 2 mana 1/4 that has +2 attack and charge while damaged. So this is basically a 3/4 charge minion if you've damaged it. So having things like the location, for instance, can pump up this even more from an attack standpoint. And you play down the location on 1, you play the Crazed Wretch on 2, boom, you're hitting the face already with some pretty high damage output. It kind of has like Alex Straza's Champion vibes of old, which I dig. Also support for that sort of enrage self-damage or minion damage deck we see for a lot of these Warrior cards so far. So really efficient damage output that supports other things, can be easily hand buffed and increased in stats even further with some of the cards we've seen. This deck looks like it's coming together rather nicely for me. The Crazed Wretch looks good. The Creepy Painting here is a new 3 mana card. It's a 0/6, and it reads, after another minion dies, become a copy of it. So this card's really intriguing. There's a couple ways to use this, right? Since it doesn't say friendly minion, you could use this alongside some removal and like copy something of your opponent's really affordably, kill their big minion and get a copy of it. That might be a nice little bonus. I don't know that many decks are going to be able to afford to do that, though. It's just like, well, what am I really going to get on average? You know, do I need to do more with my mana? Do I need to kill another minion next to it, for instance? Those sorts of things. It might be really hard to predict and rely on the Creepy Painting. Alternatively, you could use this for your own builds and, you know, kill something of your own that you want, or put this down next to something that's really big and gross and has taunt, for instance, and hope that when your opponent kills that one, that the Creepy Painting turns into that next thing and that the 6 health can kind of dodge being sniped. There's potential there too, but I think in both cases it just feels a little too hopeful and a little too awkward. I don't know how decks are going to make room for the Creepy Painting. Really great idea, funny card, but not quite good enough. Next for Shaman here, we have the Gigantotem, a 10 mana 8/8 totem. Yes, I love it. Costs 1 less for each totem you've summoned this game. So we've seen a few cards now that help us summon totems, the party favorite totem, the weapon we just saw a minute ago. And this is finally the payoff. But I gotta say, I'm still not convinced. We do like cost reductions in Hearthstone. They can be great, but I'm worried this one's still gonna take a little bit too long. I think, it's really gonna come down in the mid game most of the time. At that point, your opponent is either gonna have overwhelmed you already because you spent too much time summoning a bunch of 0/2 totems, or they're going to be able to find removal for it by that stage too. I just don't think it comes down quite quick enough to be worth it. That said, I'm obviously going to play the crap out of this. I can't wait. I love totems. I want to try to make all this work. I really hope it does. I think this is the best totem card we've seen so far. So if the archetype has hope, this might be the way it gets there. This could be the fuel, but I'm still not 100% convinced. So here's a card that might help the Gigantotem. It's Criminal Lineup, an 8 mana spell. Choose a friendly minion, summon 3 copies of it, and overload 2. So of course, if you get a Gigantotem down to 0 mana, you play it. This could be a great way to summon 3 copies of a Gigantotem. Suddenly you have 4 8/8s on board, and that's cool. I mean, again, if that's happening on turn 8, I do worry that's late. I think there will be instances where your opponent knows that's going to happen and they either have already raced you down or they're just holding on to that brawl for the big criminal lineup play. If that ever became meta, I think it would just get too easily answered and then fall out of the meta. Now, outside of those sorts of I need a 0 mana crazy thing, this is too expensive because obviously, you don't want to play a 2 mana minion with this and summon a bunch of copies of your 2 mana minion. That's rarely ever going to pay off. It's also not playing into the big spell stuff we've seen for Shaman. There's that one card that cheats out big spells, but they have to have a spell school. This doesn't have one of the supported spell schools. Bracing Cold could discount this, but I still don't know if it gets there fast enough. So yeah, there are obviously always 0 mana things that happen that help cards like this cheese it, but that still seems more unlikely and more difficult than I think most decks are going to be able to afford. So I think this one's gonna fall short. The Crooked Cook is a new 2 mana 1/4. At the end of your turn, if you dealt 3 or more damage to the enemy hero, draw a card. So this is some face deck card draw. And I gotta say, I think it's a little bit at odds with face decks though, because I don't think most face decks want to really be spending 2 mana on just developing another 1/4. I think there are way more efficient ways for decks that are going aggressively to draw cards. Most of them already have great ways to do that. Demon Hunter has tons of card draw. Hunter has the things like Furious Howl now where they have an empty hand. They draw a bunch of things. So this is in those veins of something like Voracious Reader, for instance, but it's just drawing you a single card. It's unlikely to stick around on board very long. If you didn't hit the right things, this is conditionally dead card draw. Sometimes you just didn't hit the damage, you just develop minions, and then it sits there like a total idiot. So I don't really see which decks are going to be able to make this one work. The Crud Caretaker is a 4 mana 1/1 with Battlecry, summon a 3/5 elemental with Taunt. That is the Untreated Filth. So this is all about evolve stuff. These kinds of shapes and minions are great for evolve style decks, which has been teased in this expansion. You want that low stat on a high cost unit, and then you turn this into something bigger. And that's a great little fuel piece for evolved decks. So I think this could go into evolved decks. You're probably not super pumped about it, but even at a base level, if this totally whiffs, it's not a bad play. 4 mana for a 3/5 taunt with a little bonus body. That's okay. You'll sacrifice the floor on this one for the potential upside if that sticks around for evolved shenanigans, or you're able to get it out in a single turn. There's a much bigger payoff there. So solid evolve card option. Next up is the Death Blossom Womper, a 6 mana 7/6 for Druid. Battlecry, draw a Death Rattle minion and gain its Death Rattle. So some real synergy support for Death Rattle cards. We saw the Druid location come along that activates Death Rattles for you. So clearly, this seems like a nice little stopgap for a Death Rattle deck. You play the location, you play the Womper, you draw your big Death Rattle thing you love and care about. This gets that Death Rattle, so that's a bonus version there. The location can activate that immediately, so that's a bonus version of that Death Rattle there. And then you have the big awesome Death Rattle in hand as well. This looks like the super perfect kind of deck for me. I love these kinds of big greedy Death Rattle bomb decks, and you could actually use this as a bomb with things like Humongous Owl, for instance. I think Druid probably plays a little better for like, sticky, greedy, board-based death rattles. So as soon as one of those comes along, this feels like it could be one of those like secondary archetypes for Druid. I bet this isn't going to be the best way to play Druid. It feels like the Topior nature stuff's going to take the #1 spot. But could this be that sort of off-meta, fringe meta thing, especially as it gets future support in later expansions? I absolutely think so, and it seems like Death Blossom Whumper is a fine piece of the puzzle for that deck. Next up here, we have the Dinner Performer, a 3-mana 2/3 neutral. The pretty cool effect, Battlecry, summon a random minion from your deck that you can afford to play. So this one's intriguing. Yeah, I'm a little torn on this one. I think in the early game, obviously, you're not super pumped about it. If it's turn 4 and the summons you a 1-drop, it's like, okay, that's not exactly a strong turn. I got the 1-drop for free. Maybe I have a 1-drop in hand because you still keep the mana left over, right? You can like follow it up a little bit. But you sacrifice quite a bit to play a 3-mana 2/3. But if you're on like turn 8, right, and you summon a 5-drop from your deck, okay, that's a little more interesting, right? I got a free 5-drop and still have that 5 mana to play something else. But at the end of the day, it's still just like minions on board. It's just tempo. And then if you're looking to do really crazy things in the late game, are you caring as much about tempo, or do you want other game plans, other synergies, other win conditions that are developing instead of just kind of cheating things into play? You could use this as almost like a tutor of sorts, where you have a big 7-drop you really want to make sure you find, for instance, and it's turn 10, and this makes you sure you absolutely summon your 7-drop. And there could be other really specific breakpoints where you find the thing you care about, and that helps you get it rolling sooner. So there's some weird, sneaky use cases I could see for this card. I feel like there's some kind of crazy potential baked in here. I don't think it's something you're going to see every day or even often. But will the occasional deck make this work in some cool way? I think that's absolutely possible. Next up, we have Dispose of Evidence for Demon Hunter, a 0-mana spell that gives your hero +3 attack this turn, and then you choose a card in your hand to shuffle into your deck. And remember, for Demon Hunter here, we've got some of this empty hand support where you're wanting to empty your hand and then refill it affordably and so on and so forth. And man, this is just a crazy high damage output card for 0 mana. I think you're often going to end a turn with nothing in hand anyway, and you just play this for free and you got a really nice aggressive push. I hate cards like this. I don't really want to see really cheap affordable damage, but I'm sure there's going to be some way to make this very good. 0 mana spells always create shenanigans and problems, and the efficiency of this is off the charts. There is, of course, a downside, but I think that's one that's fairly easy to work around for Demon Hunter. So I do think Dispose of Evidence is going to be a pretty solid card. Next up is Divine Toll, a 7-mana spell for Paladin. It's going to shoot 5 rays at random minions. They give friendly minions +2/+2 and deal 2 damage to enemy minions. So this is a pretty crazy design, asymmetrical effect here. I gotta say, I don't think it's very exciting hitting enemy minions with this one. It feels like a fairly inefficient way to respond to a board. It's gonna leave a lot of stuff behind. It's gonna feel like you just spent a lot of mana to do nothing. And if you're way ahead on board, I mean, this is a nice like buff follow-up, soft bloodlust or something of sorts, where you're just buffing your board for a lot, maybe converting that into some face damage or just some value trades. So when it's in the middle and you get a little bit of each, again, it does not feel very efficient to me. I think basically the more it's hitting enemy minions, the worse this is going to feel. There are theoretically some big spell things in Paladin to support this, but not really. I don't know, unless I'm missing something about this card. There is an interpretation of this text where each ray gives all minions +2/+2, and each ray deals 2 damage to all enemy minions. In other words, like it would deal 10 damage to all enemy minions, and it would buff your board for 10/10. But that seems far too big. It seems like a really liberal interpretation. So instead, I think it's just really awkward and really slow. I don't know, maybe stay tuned for this one, but as I currently read it, I think not very good. Double Cross is a card we saw teased a little earlier, but I didn't do the final review on it. It's a rogue secret. It reads, when your opponent spends all their mana, draw 2 cards. So you punish your opponent playing on curve here by gaining a couple cards. So pretty efficient card draw. We've seen card draw and secrets work well before for rogue. I think this condition's one your opponent is going to have trouble with. They want to spend their mana. They want to fill mana. If they don't, you're netting a huge benefit off the Double Cross anyway. So if you're limiting them to floating a mana every turn, huge net tempo anyway, and if they play it normally, you get to draw 2 cards. That feels pretty good as well. So I think this is a great fit for the Rogue Secret package. Next up is Dredger Staff, a 1 mana 1/2 battlecry gift. Minions in your hand plus 1 health. So a small little hand buff here for minions in hand, and a small little minion to get down on turn 1. I gotta say, I just don't think this payoff is enough. We've seen similarly costed hand buff that scales way faster because you scale attack as well. I think that's really when hand buff becomes the most threatening. Things like, you know, high attack minions with divine shield, or keywords like rush or charge that benefit. I don't know that the health here adds up quick enough to matter. Invitation Courier is a 3 mana neutral. It's a 3/4, and it reads, after a card is added to your hand from another class, copy it. So some burgley, thiefy shenanigan support here, getting extra copies of the things you burgle. But I gotta say, I feel like 3 mana is a pretty high tax to pay for that effect. Like, yes, we have some burgle effects in the meta right now. Things like Rogue are, of course, playing that really well. But do they want to spend 3 mana to get more copies? And yeah, it's a 3/4, sure, but there's other ways to spend 3 mana and get bodies on board and maybe have more immediate effects or more directed effects. This feels like I'm gonna get some random things. I don't even know what they're gonna be. Do I even want extra copies of them? I don't think that overhead is really gonna feel worth it for a vast majority of decks. Next up is the Masked Reveler, a 6 mana 4/4 with Rush and Death Rattle. Summon a 2/2 copy of another minion in your deck. So this is actually a pretty interesting little effect. It kind of has Mothership vibes, the 6-drop that rushes in and summons a thing. Well, 1 thing instead of 2 things in this case, but it could be a really good thing. It could be another Masked Reveler even. And then you keep the chain rolling, and we've already talked about some big death rattle stuff, potential for Druid. This might fit in nicely there. We've got some really good effects that you're trying to summon into play, like, yeah, you lose their stats, but if they have big death rattle upsides anyway, you may not really care too much about that. And the fact that this has Rush helps it keep up, even though it's a little bit more on the expensive side for cards. It's not going to let you fall too far behind necessarily. So I don't know, keep an eye on this one. This seems like sneaky high potential for a neutral card. Moving on to the Muck Plumber, a 5 mana 5/5 that reads, all minions cost 2 more. So we've got minion summoning tech here, or if your opponent's trying to play a bunch of stuff or do some crazy minion combo turn, you can play Muck Plumber and Loatheb their minions. That's fun in theory, but I just don't see the need for this a vast majority of the time. If, you know, it is disruptive at all, it's probably not super hard for most decks to deal with this if they're that kind of deck that cares about developing a weird combo board of minions late in the game. I just don't really see that happening. On curve, like, maybe this could theoretically be disruptive, but most decks are going to want to do something that's more decisive, more directed for them, more focused than the Muck Plumber. These kinds of cards tend to fall off pretty hard, pretty fast. I just don't think this one's very good. Identity Theft is a new pre-spell, 3 mana shadow spell. Discover a copy of a card from your opponent's hand and deck. And this is some major Thought Steal vibes. 3 mana, get a couple things, but you get to discover them in this case. So you both get to see 3 cards in your opponent's hand. That's some nice informational advantage. And then you get 2 copies of potentially really nice cards, some value generation here. We've also got things like the legendary Harvester of Envy. When you play a card that you copied from your opponent, you steal the original. I still think this is a pretty expensive setup here. You got to have the Envy on board. You got to pick cards that are cheap enough to steal and play at the same time as Envy. We're going to see a card that discounts stuff, so it like kind of comes together, but I still think that feels pretty fringe and more awkward than effective. This feels like the kind of card that's going to be great to randomly discover, just create a chain of stuff in hand, get some information along the way. All that's great. As far as like driving a high tier deck, I don't quite see it yet for the Burgle Priest package. Mysterious Visitor is some support for this thief stuff. 2 mana 2/3 battlecry. Reduce the cost of cards copied from your opponent by 2. So this definitely helps you get them all out with the Harvester of Envy. You discover, copy, 3 or 4 things in hand. Maybe you pick some like cards that are say 3 to 5 mana on average. You discount all those down to like 1 to 3. Then you spend 3 mana on the Envy, and then you have 3 or 4 cards you play alongside Envy. Probably in the late game, you're still probably gonna have to get to like 7 or 8 mana to even pull all that off. But you also just get to play some cheap stuff, so that's nice. Even if it doesn't all work out with Envy and everything, you can still create a combo where you're playing a lot of cheap cards from your opponent, so gain a little bit of tempo back. again, it's coming together. You can see the lines, you see the deck forming. It just feels like it's going to be awkward to me. You got to have Envy in hand to make it feel really good and disruptive. Otherwise, it's this kind of like random stuff, kind of tempo-y, but not really. It's more value, and then it's just like, well, where does this really lead to? Where does this go? How do I win the game from there? I still think it's going to be awkward, but it does actually look like it's coming together to be a really fun deck. I have to say, I'm getting really excited to play this one. Partner in Crime is a new priest card, 4 mana, 2/5, Battlecry. Summon a copy of this minion at the end of turn. So pretty neat idea here. You get a Partner in Crime down, you buff it up a ton, or I guess even buff it in hand, maybe a little harder for priest, but play a bunch of cheap Serpent Wigs on this, and you got 2 gigantic minions with your Serpent Wig buffs. There are also other perhaps enchantments you could put on this in various ways, and nothing comes to mind right away, but you know, any kind of like Death Rattle or sneaky thing you add onto this, copying that as well could be some upside too. It's a little bit of an expensive payoff for things like Serpent Wig decks. You know, they want to get going a little faster, want to get those taller minions down sooner if they can, and start leveraging that much earlier in the game. But even just a Partner of Crime and a Bless is still, you know, a big stat dump, a follow-up, a kind of mid-game second wave threat for that deck. So I think this has a little bit of potential. It's just not going to rock anybody's world as it currently stands. Next up is Riot. It's a 2-mana spell. Your minions can't be reduced below 1 health this turn. They each attack a random enemy minion. This is a really cool effect. I mean, this seems very good to me again. Basically, you make a board of little stuff, and you use Riot here, and your minions can't die. So as long as they're about equal in size to your opponent's stuff, there's a good chance you're going to wipe most of your opponent's board and be left with your own board. And they're often going to be damaged minions, which of course supports all of these damaged minions things happening in Warrior. This seems like a high potential for a swing card. You know, it does demand you play some minions with it, so it's going to be happening a little later. You know, you might need the right shapes of minions, slightly bigger stuff to take good trades. So there could be some awkward turns for this, but I still think the setup is there. And if you're ever like ahead on board at any stage and your opponent plays a board into your board, this is a really good way to sort of double leverage your board. Just run face with everything, dump the Riot, your minions still get to trade in and get left behind, and you have tons of other synergies to support as well with all of those damaged minions. So I don't know, this seems like a really high output card again. This deck looks very good to me so far. Next up is the Roosting Gargoyle, a 2-mana 2/3 with Battlecry. Give a friendly beast +2 attack. So, you know, it's like Dark Iron Dwarf vibes of old. That's okay. I mean, you know, a little extra damage, a better trade, but ultimately no deck I don't see it's ever going to make room for this card. It just doesn't do enough. The output's not there. The synergy's not there. This looks very weak. Next up is the Scuttlebutt Ghoul, a 4-mana 2/5 taunt with Battlecry. If you control a secret, summon a copy of this. So this is another 4-mana secret follow-up card. This is 2 2/5 taunt bodies. I mean, that's actually not terrible. That's really disruptive and slows people down a lot. Like, they are gonna eat through, you know, a turn of your opponent trading for sure, maybe even more, get left behind because that is 10 total health. That's just a lot to chew through, essentially. Problem is, at 2 attack, I don't think it's gonna take great trades on the return, so a lot of the minions that traded in this are gonna be like 3/3s that are still hanging around afterwards, and it's conditional, right? So you have to have a secret in play for this to feel good. And I think a lot of decks that are playing secrets are going to find better things to do for their mana. Like Mage literally has a couple cards already that do the same sort of thing, same condition, but do much better plays, I think, than the Scuttlebutt Ghoul. So I think this one's actually going to land in a really awkward spot. Even though it is a secret synergy card, that doesn't necessarily mean all secret decks are going to run it. I just don't think they're going to make room for the Scuttlebutt Ghoul. Next up is Service Bell for Paladin here, 3-mana spell. It discovers a class card from your deck and draws all copies of it. So this is both a tutor and a potential really nice card draw option. 3 mana to draw 2, that classic Arcane Intellect efficiency here, but it's got upside because you get to pick which cards you get, and that can be really nice to help you fill your curve or just get really high quality cards. There's some particular pair in your deck that you like a lot, Service Bell is going to help you find that. So yeah, I think decks will love this as a tool. There will be decks that don't mind spending a little extra mana of inefficiency in their card draw just to ensure that they get quality of card draw instead. There could even be some crazy ways to manipulate this where you only have a specific set of class cards in your deck, and then you make sure you get both of them as soon as possible if there's some crazy build around or setup card. So I think Service Bell looks really good. Next up is Sinful Brand, a 1-mana spell. It brands an enemy minion. It's for Demon Hunter, by the way. Whenever it takes damage, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. So man, this would be like a Defile dream if you had Defile, brand an enemy minion, and then Defile it 7 times. The opponent takes 14 damage here off the Sinful Brand. In reality, I think that's going to be a little bit more awkward to use. There are like things like token minions in Demon Hunter. You get a bunch of 1/1s, you cast Sinful Brand, you trade in all your 1/1s into like a 5/5 or something, and then you get 10 damage out of it. So I don't want to write this off. That's a crazy output if it works. But is that deck going to come together? Man, actually, now that I think about that, that actually sounds kind of insane. There are still plenty of ways to make 1/1s in Demon Hunter, and this could be a huge damage output card that punishes people for just playing a minion. Is this actually sort of insane? Demon Hunter might be harder to pull off in Standard, but man, and things like duels in particular, I'm getting a little bit lost in this one, but I don't know, man. This actually is kind of intriguing. Between your hero power, 1/1s off like a Battle-Worn Vanguard, anything else that just summons small minions. There's even like Fell Rattler that deals 1 damage increments, right? Man, this could be a crazy combo setup. We still even have a Coordinated Strike, summon 3 1/1 Illidari with Rush. Keep an eye on this. Double Sinful Brand into like a few Rush minions is crazy damage output. Okay, I take it back. This card might actually be totally insane. It looks high potential at least. Sinstone Totem is another totem, a neutral totem, a 1-mana 0/3 with the effect at the end of your turn, gain +1 health. So if this sticks around a while, starts scaling up health. I really don't see how that's super useful for a totem deck. It's a little bit slightly stickier, but still doesn't trade well, still just gets eaten for free. I think there's maybe potential here. It's something like a priest deck who cares a lot about health totals. Like maybe this is the best possible 1-drop if you're looking to use a Bless on turn 2. That's like a 6/6 on turn 2. But is that 1 health better than any other 1-drop? Like, you know, is that better than a Vicious Slither Spear? Are there metas where that 1 health is summoning this as a 0/4 instead of a 1/3 makes all the difference? I just don't see that happening very often, but it's a tiny chance that, you know, if everybody's running 1-mana 3 damage removal, this could be good in a priest deck, but man, that's a stretch. Next up is the Steam Cleaner, a 5-mana 5/5 mech with Battlecry. Destroy all cards in both players' decks that didn't start there. So you shuffle stuff into your deck, screw you, I'm the Steam Cleaner. So this is, you know, a potential counter to decks that are like trying to build a bunch of value by shuffling stuff into their deck. For instance, you know, a Kazakhstan counter, just play the treasures, boom, I'm gonna Steam Cleaner to kill all of them. Alternatively, you could use this to like remove Curse of Agonies from your deck. You get Agonied a bunch, play the Steam Cleaner to clean out the Curse of Agonies from your deck. So really specific tech card basically, and I think that what that means is a card that really barely ever gets played. I think it's nice for cards like this to exist, to create those options, but most of the time you won't be able to afford to run it, or the meta won't demand that you run it. So not especially useful the majority of the time. Next up is the Stoneborn Accuser, a 5-mana 5/5 neutral with Infuse 5. Gain Battlecry, deal 5 damage. Say 5 one more time. So if you put a lot of work into the Stoneborn Accuser here, you have a pretty solid card. A 5/5 that deals 5 is a pretty good option. It's still not good though, and it takes a lot of work, and most decks aren't going to be able to risk or afford to put in that work for the Stoneborn Accuser. There are other infused synergies and plays that feel much stronger. I think this one gets cut all the time. Next up is the Stoneborn General, a big old Death Rattle boy, 10 mana 8/8 with Rush, and Death Rattle summon an 8/8 Gravewing with Rush. So this is the payoff card you're looking for things like Death Rattle Druid. This is the perfect sort of minion because it offers immediacy on both parts. You get 2 great Rush minions, and it's just a big pile of stuff too, so it's sticky and threatening on board. I mean, this is like the dream 10-drop, really. It has kind of the 7/7 Colossal Taunt guy vibes, but it's Rush instead of Taunt, and I think that's going to be really good in a lot of scenarios. So this is going to be one of those cards that's like sneaky good for a 10-drop. I think there will be decks that are able to build around this and build into this and do some cool things with it. So Stoneborn General looks pretty dang good. Suffocating Shadows is a 2-star card. Murlocula is a 4-star card. The Countess is a 3-star card. Imbued Axe is a 4-star card. Suspicious Pirate is a 3-star card. The Light It Burns is a 4-star card. Anima Extractor is a 5-star card. Anonymous Informant is a 3-star card. Carving Chisel is a 2-star card. Chatty Bartender is a 3-star card. Collateral Damage is a 3-star card. Conqueror's Banner is a 4-star card. Crazed Wretch is a 4-star card. Creepy Painting is a 2-star card. Gigantotem is a 3-star card. Criminal Lineup is a 2-star card. Crooked Cook is a 1-star card. Crud Caretaker is a 3-star card. Death Blossom Whomper is a 4-star card. Dinner Performer is a 3-star card. Dispose of Evidence is a 4-star card. Divine Toll is a 2-star card. Double Cross is a 4-star card. Dredger Staff is a 1-star card. Invitation Courier is a 1-star card. Masked Reveler is a 3-star card. Muck Plumber is a 1-star card. Maybe 5 stars in Arena. Identity Theft is a 3-star card. Mysterious Visitor is a 3-star card. Partner of Crime is a 3-star card. Riot is a 4-star card. Roosting Gargoyle is a 1-star card. Scuttlebutt Ghoul is a 2-star card. Sinful Brand is a 4-star card. Service Bell is a 4-star card. Sinstone Totem is a 2-star card. Steam Cleaner is a 2-star card. Stoneborn Accuser is a 1-star card. Stoneborn General is a 4-star card. And there you go, folks. That wraps it up for this review. Lots of cards. What do you think? Share the hidden gems here that you think are going to completely blow up the meta. Which cards are you most excited to play? Want to hear all that and more in the comments below. I'll be playing these cards pretty soon, actually, at the Theory Crafting event. As always, I think that's tomorrow. So stay tuned for lots of deck videos covering these. If you have deck recommendations or cool ideas you'd like to see, of course, feel free to share those. And we'll see what we can do. But pretty cool set of cards. Really excited to give a lot of these a try. Thanks for joining me on this crazy long card review journey. Thanks much as always for watching. And until next time, game on.